I almost died in the hospital, and my husband didn't care. When the nurse asked, "Are you her husband?" he replied, "Only on paper." I looked up, eyes full of tears, and said, "That's fine. Paper burns." My lawyer walked in with divorce papers before my discharge. My name is Selena. I'm 48 years old, married, technically 2 grown kids, and I own a small bakery in Evanston, Illinois. My life has always been predictable, stable, until suddenly it wasn't. I had a heart attack 3 weeks ago. Yeah, that's how this all starts. Not with a fight, not with cheating. Well, not just cheating, not with yelling or slammed doors or shattered dishes. It started with chest pain while decorating a wedding cake. I've been pushing myself hard for years. Running the bakery, managing inventory, keeping track of seasonal employees, filling in when someone calls in sick, doing 12-hour shifts during holiday rushes. I did it all with a smile. I was proud of what I built. It was mine. Brent, my husband, never really understood the bakery. He always saw it as a hobby I turned into a job. I'd hear him downplay it at parties or in conversations with friends. "Oh, Selena runs that little cake shop," he'd say, like I was selling lemonade with a Girl Scout sash. We'd been married for 23 years. From the outside, we looked like the successful, solid couple. 2 kids in college, nice house, good income, matching patio furniture, 2 Labradors named Duke and Clover. Brent worked in finance in Chicago, took the train in every day. Or that's what I thought, at least. More on that later. Anyway, that morning, I was finishing up a 3-tier almond cake for a couple getting married that weekend. I remember I had just piped the last rosette when my left arm went numb. My chest tightened like someone had pressed a cinder block onto it. I couldn't breathe. My knees gave out, and the piping bag fell from my hand and splattered on the floor. I passed out right there on the kitchen tile. The only reason I'm alive is because my daughter, Kara, had come by unexpectedly to drop off something she'd borrowed. She found me unconscious and called 911. If she had come 15 minutes later, the doctors said I wouldn't have made it. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed hooked up to machines. There was this awful beeping, a plastic taste in my mouth, and a nurse checking my pulse. I could barely talk, but she smiled and said, "You're okay now. You're safe." Safe. I hadn't felt truly safe in years. But it wasn't until a day later that I realized just how unsafe I had been in my own life. Brent didn't come to the hospital that night. Or the next morning. He arrived around noon the following day, wearing a suit and a Bluetooth earpiece. He smelled faintly like cologne and bourbon, and the first thing he said was, "You look okay." Not, "Oh my God," or "Are you all right?" or "I was so scared." Just, "You look okay." I stared at him for a long time, hoping he'd say more. Hoping he'd sit down, touch my hand, ask what happened. But he didn't. He just stood there at the foot of the bed like he was visiting someone else's wife. And then, the moment that's etched into my mind like a scar. The nurse came in to adjust my fore and glanced between us. "Are you her husband?" she asked, holding a clipboard. Brent gave a quick, dismissive nod and said, "Only on paper." He didn't even look at me when he said it. Only on paper. I don't know what kind of strength filled me in that moment. Maybe the heartbreak, maybe the morphine, but I turned my head and looked right at him with tears streaming down my face and whispered, "That's fine. Paper burns." I swear to God, even the nurse froze. He didn't apologize. He didn't say anything. He just mumbled something about needing to take a call and walked out of the room like he had somewhere better to be. 2 hours later, my lawyer walked into my hospital room. Irene Solano. She's been my friend for almost 10 years. We met at a local women's networking event when I was first opening the bakery. I had called her 6 months earlier, during one of those quiet breakdowns you have after everyone goes to bed and the dishwasher is running and your chest feels hollow, and asked about divorce. I guess I'd forgotten. Or buried it. Or hoped it wouldn't come to that. But she remembered. "I kept the papers ready," she said gently, placing them on the tray table next to my Jell-O cup. "I knew you'd know when the time was right." And that moment? Lying in a hospital bed with my heart broken in every way possible, that was the time. I signed. The fallout was worse than I imagined. Brent didn't even bother to argue. He just sent me a text. "Let me know what you want from the house." No begging. No guilt. Not even a fake apology. Just logistics. A week later, Kara sat with me in the hospital room, brushing my hair back and feeding me spoonfuls of soup. "Did you know?" I asked her softly. She hesitated. I suspected. "I didn't have proof, but he hasn't been the same in a long time, Mom. He checks out of every conversation." He's never home. He talks to you like you're an obligation. That last part stung. Not because it wasn't true, but because deep down I'd known it too. My son, Leo, was less composed. He called me, furious. I want to punch him in the face, he said. I looked up to him. He was supposed to be our dad. Your husband. What kind of man does that? A coward, I replied. Later, I found out about Paula. She was in her early 30s, worked in HR at Brent's firm. Divorced. No kids. She and Brent had met at a leadership retreat in Denver. I didn't have to do much digging. His phone records and credit card statements practically drew me a map. When I confronted him, over the phone, I didn't have the energy for a face-to-face. He didn't deny it. It wasn't serious, he said. It was an escape. From what? Your life? Me? Everything. He sounded exhausted. Like he was the victim here. You know what the worst part is? I said, voice shaking. It's not even the cheating. It's that you didn't even try to pretend you cared when I almost died. Silence. Then, I didn't know what to say. You could have said anything, but you chose the truth. He didn't call back after that. That's where I'll pause for now. There's more, so much more. How the bakery became my sanctuary again, how Kara moved back in for a bit to help me recover, how I found unexpected kindness from people I never expected. But I'm tired, and my actual heart needs rest. I'll update again soon if people are interested. Just, thank you for reading. And if you've ever felt like the person you love most couldn't care less if you lived or died, please know you're not alone. And please know this, paper burns. And sometimes, that's the best thing that can happen. The first morning back home from the hospital felt strange. The house didn't feel like mine anymore, though technically it still was. I was staying in the guest room because even lying on the sheets Brent and I once shared made my stomach twist. Kara had stocked the fridge, made the bed, lit one of those eucalyptus candles she knew I liked. The house was clean, too clean. It smelled like lemon-scented Lysol and silence. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, sipping weak tea, staring at the spot on the floor where I had collapsed. There was still a faint stain on the tile, probably raspberry filling from the cake that never got delivered. Mom? Kara's voice pulled me back. Yeah? She sat down across from me, her face tired but soft. She looked more like her dad than she liked to admit, same sharp cheekbones, same green-flecked eyes, but when she smiled, she was all mine. Are you sure about the divorce? I took a slow breath. I'd been asked that question in my head 1,000 times. I am. She nodded. No protests. No pleading. Just a quiet, supportive okay. A few seconds passed before she said, you know, it's weird. I think I always assumed you'd outlast all my friends' parents. You two just kept going. I gave a dry laugh. That's the thing. We weren't going. We were just coasting. And at some point, we both stopped caring who fell out first. The following weekend, Leo drove down from Milwaukee. He'd brought his girlfriend, Amara, a gentle, artsy woman with dreadlocks and a degree in environmental design. I liked her instantly. Leo came into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and frowned. Where's the leftover lasagna? I was dreaming about it the whole drive here. Your sister took it to work. Ugh. Typical. He grinned and gave me a one-armed hug. Then he got serious. How are you? Really? I hesitated. Still a little sore. Tired. But breathing. And emotionally? I looked at him and realized he was no longer the teenager who once locked himself in his room after his first breakup. He was a man now, thoughtful, present, more emotionally fluent than Brent ever was. I don't know if I'm grieving the marriage or just the time I wasted in it, I finally said. He sat down at the kitchen table and leaned in. Mom, you didn't waste anything. You gave us a stable home. You built something real out of nothing. You were the one holding it all together. That made me tear up. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Thanks, Leo. Also, he added, voice lowering, Dad texted me. I blinked. What did he say? Just that he hoped you were okay. That he didn't know how to handle it. That he was sorry it got this far. I snorted. He had 23 years to figure out how to handle it. Leo looked conflicted. Do you want me to talk to him? Only if you want to. I'm not asking anyone to pick sides. But I won't pretend he didn't abandon me when I needed him most. He nodded. I won't pretend either. A week later, I returned to the bakery. It was a Tuesday morning, and everything still smelled like cinnamon and coffee. The staff had held things together in my absence, and when I walked in, they paused, stunned. Selena, Michelle, my assistant manager, dropped a tray of croissants. Hey, I smiled, though my chest still ached. I'm not back full-time yet. Just visiting. There were hugs, teary greetings, and even a handmade card someone had taped to the espresso machine. I felt a lump rise in my throat. We thought we lost you, Michelle whispered. I almost did lose me, I said softly. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. That day, I sat in the back office and went through invoices, trying to reacclimate myself. But I couldn't stop thinking about that wedding cake, the one I never finished. The couple had sent me a handwritten note. We heard what happened. We're so sorry. Please don't worry about the cake. Our guests said the donuts were a hit anyway. We're just glad you're okay. And when we renew our vows in 10 years, we hope you'll be the one to bake the next one. I cried reading it. Not because of the kindness, though that was part of it. But because I realized something. Life was moving on. Even mine. And yet, Brent kept hovering in the background like a bad signal you can't fully block. A mutual friend told me that he and Paula had already split. Apparently, she didn't like how he compartmentalized his emotions. I almost laughed. He didn't compartmentalize. He straight up buried them under 6 feet of financial spreadsheets and emotional negligence. One night, around 10 p.m., I got a knock at my door. Kara was working late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the blinds. It was Brent. I didn't open the door right away, just stared at him through the glass for a moment. When I finally did, I stepped outside, pulling my cardigan tighter around me. What do you want? He looked older, tired. He'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I just needed to see you. You saw me last month. In a hospital bed. He winced. I know. I handled that terribly. I panicked. I didn't know what to say. You said everything when you told the nurse you were only my husband on paper. He looked down at the porch steps, silent. Selena, I know it's too late. But I need you to know I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it. You forgot how to be decent, Brent. You forgot how to care. You forgot me. He looked like he wanted to cry but didn't have the courage. Are you seeing anyone? He asked suddenly. I blinked. That's really none of your business. He nodded. Right. Of course. I'm sorry. Then he added, I still think about the first time we met. That party at Jordan's house. You had a smear of frosting on your cheek and still looked like the most beautiful woman in the room. I didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, I whispered, memories don't undo damage, Brent. He turned to leave, paused, and said, if you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. I closed the door behind him. Then I leaned against it, breathing hard, and whispered, too late. I'm not sure what's next. I haven't decided if I'll sell the house. Maybe I'll move to a little apartment near the lake. I've started journaling. I go on walks. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since I was in college. There's something strange about starting over in your late 40s. There's grief, yes. But there's also power. For now, I'm still finding my footing. Still learning how to live for myself, not for someone else's comfort. Still rising from the ashes. The next few weeks were a blur of strange contradictions. On the outside, I was getting stronger, my body healing little by little, the color returning to my face, my appetite finding its way back. But inside, there was this weird hollow space where my marriage used to be. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It wasn't anger, either. It was something harder to name. Grief, maybe, but not for Brent. For the life I thought I had. For the version of me who tried so hard to keep it alive. One night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing my hair, when I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A deep crease across my brow that hadn't been there last year. It wasn't just age. It was everything. Stress, sleepless nights, years of swallowing my own needs. I stared at my reflection for a long time, then whispered, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was talking to myself, or to her, the woman I had been before everything cracked open. At the bakery, things started shifting too. Michelle kept the place running like a well-oiled machine, but the regulars kept asking for me. You still making the lemon tarts, Selena? I miss seeing you behind the counter. Glad you're okay, Han. We prayed for you. Every single time, their words warmed something in me. Reminded me that people saw me, really saw me, even when Brent never did. I started showing up more. I couldn't handle full days yet, but a few hours at a time gave me purpose. I'd roll up my sleeves, touch the dough again, listen to the sound of the espresso machine steaming in the background. It felt like returning to church after a long spiritual drought. One slow Thursday morning, Michelle brought in a man I didn't recognize. Selena, this is Jules. He's the new delivery guy for the supplier since Rob retired. I wiped my hands on my apron and extended mine. Nice to meet you. Jules smiled. Mid-50s maybe. Laugh lines. Kind eyes. I've heard great things. You've got half the staff at the warehouse obsessed with your peach scones. I laughed. Tell them if they want more, they have to stop cutting my flour shipments in half. He grinned. Deal. He had this easy confidence about him, not like Brent's cold detachment, but the kind of quiet comfort you don't notice at first and then miss when it's gone. We only talked for 5 minutes tops. But later that night, I caught myself thinking about him. Not romantically. Not yet. Just thinking. That weekend, Kara came home from her shift at the vet clinic, hair tied up, jacket slung over her shoulder, and announced, Dad texted again. I looked up from my cup of tea. What did he say this time? He wants to meet. Just me and him. I set the mug down carefully. What do you want to do? She sat across from me, brow furrowed. I don't know. I'm curious, I guess. Angry too. You can go. I won't stop you. She looked up sharply. Would it bother you? I took a deep breath. No. He's still your father, Kara. I'll never ask you to choose. But protect your heart. He has a habit of showing up with just enough emotion to keep people tied to him. Her mouth twisted. You know what's crazy? When I was little, I used to think he hung the moon. He'd read bedtime stories and call me champ. And now I can't tell if I was brainwashed or just too young to see it. Maybe both. She nodded slowly. I think I'll go. Just once. Hear what he has to say. She met him at a coffee shop near the lake the next day. I waited at home, heart in my throat, pretending to fold laundry I didn't care about. She came back around 4, dropped her bag by the door, and flopped on the couch. So? I asked, trying to sound casual. She let out a long sigh. He cried. That surprised me. What for? Said he missed us. That he hated how things turned out. Said he made mistakes. I narrowed my eyes. Did he take responsibility? Or just say a bunch of vague, I'm sorries? She looked at me for a long time. Somewhere in between. I think he wants redemption, but not the kind that requires him to change. I sat next to her, the silence stretching between us like an invisible thread. What did you say? I told him I was angry. That I saw what he did to you. That we both deserved better. I felt a rush of pride. Good. She turned to me and added, he asked if you were seeing anyone. I snorted. Of course he did. I told him you weren't. But that didn't mean you were waiting around for him either. I laughed. Damn right I'm not. Later that week, Irene called. We're close to finalizing the settlement. You'll keep the house, the bakery, the car. He's agreed to a one-time buyout instead of ongoing support. That's fine, I said. I want clean breaks. No threads left behind. You sure? Absolutely. I didn't want anything from Brent. Not his money. Not his pity. Not even closure. I wanted peace. And you can't buy that with alimony on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I bumped into Jules again. He was dropping off supplies and saw me struggling with a sack of flour. Let me help with that. He lifted it like it weighed nothing. Thanks, I said, brushing hair out of my face. He looked at me carefully. You okay? I blinked. What do you mean? You've got that look. Like you're somewhere else. I paused. I guess I've been somewhere else for years. Just starting to come back now. He smiled. Well, welcome back. And something about the way he said it made my heart flutter, just for a second. That night, I stood in the middle of my kitchen, lights off, music low, staring out the window at the dark, wet street. And I whispered to myself. Like a promise, I'm still here. I'm still standing. Not for Brent. Not for my kids. But for me. It's strange how clarity can sneak up on you. You think it'll arrive like a lightning strike, some powerful cinematic moment, but it's more like sunlight through blinds in the early morning. Gentle, persistent, undeniable. That was the feeling I had the morning the divorce was finalized. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, the same one I had cried in front of weeks earlier, and looked at myself with new eyes. The woman staring back had lines, sure. Tired eyes. But there was strength there now. A calm I hadn't known in years. I wore a navy blue dress that hugged in all the right places, did my makeup, subtle but confident, and met Irene at the courthouse. Brent was already there, dressed in his usual expensive suit, thumbing through his phone like he had something better to do. You look well, he said without looking up. I am, I replied and meant it. He didn't ask how the kids were. Didn't ask about the bakery. Just nodded along as the judge signed off on everything, our 23 years summarized in a 15-minute hearing. When it was over, Irene patted my shoulder. "Congratulations," she said. I stood there for a second, heart pounding, then turned to Brent. "Hey," I said. He looked up. "You remember that time I told you paper burns?" He smirked. "Yeah, dramatic." I smiled. "Maybe, but I made something out of those ashes." He didn't respond. Probably didn't know how. That something I made started with the bakery. About 2 weeks after the divorce, I officially rebranded Marsh Crumbs. New name, Paper Burns. The sign out front was handwritten in delicate script, backlit with soft amber lighting. On opening day of the relaunch, we had a line out the door. People were curious. "Paper burns?" they'd ask. And I'd smile and say, sometimes the best things begin when everything else falls apart. The bakery became more than a shop, it became mine, fully. I introduced new menu items, a signature bitter chocolate tart named the Brent, a wildly popular flaky honey croissant called Freedom Roll, and a small, deeply personal almond cake with raspberry filling, called Second Chances. That one always sold out. As for Brent? Well, life caught up with him, not by my hand, but by the consequences of his own choices. Turns out, Paula had been the second affair. There was someone before her. And someone after. The firm caught wind of some inappropriate expense reports and, long story short, he resigned quietly. His reputation soured. A couple of our mutual friends, mostly his crowd, distanced themselves. I heard through the grapevine that he tried launching a consulting firm, but it fizzled fast. No real connections. No real charm without a name behind him. A few months later, he tried to sell the downtown condo he'd moved into, only to discover it was underwater due to some risky refinancing. I didn't take any pleasure in it. But I won't lie, it felt like justice, and then there was Jules. We'd kept things light for a while. Flirtatious deliveries, coffee shared in the back room, quiet laughter during slow mornings. One day, he stopped by on his day off, no flower, no invoice. Just a bouquet of wildflowers and a shy smile. "You free for dinner?" he asked. I paused, looked around the shop. "You asking me on a date?" He nodded. "Only if you want it to be." I thought about everything. About who I'd been, who I was becoming. About not needing anyone to complete me, but still, how lovely it felt to be seen. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." Kara and Leo both came to the grand reopening event we hosted in the spring. The weather was perfect, the patio full of regulars and new faces, live music playing softly in the background. Kara pulled me aside, a glass of sparkling cider in hand. "Mom," she said, "you did it. You built something new." I looked around the shop. The laughter. The smells of fresh bread and lavender shortbread. The way the setting sun caught the gold lettering on the sign. "We did it," I corrected her. "This is all of us." Leo came up behind me, kissed my cheek. Dad texted me again. Said he saw the article in the local business magazine. Asked if you were hiring. I burst out laughing. Loud. "Free. Tell him to submit a resume," I said. "I'll let Michelle decide." So here's the full circle. Brent didn't die. He didn't suffer some dramatic fall from grace. But he lost something more subtle, and maybe more painful. He lost access. To me. To the warmth he never valued. To the family he thought would always orbit around him. And I got everything. I got my life back. My bakery. My name. My peace. I found joy in the smallest things again, painting my nails, waking up early to make scones, dancing alone in the kitchen to Etta James. The revenge wasn't in ruining his life. It was in rebuilding mine better, without him. It was in flour-dusted countertops and quiet mornings with coffee and someone who asks how my day was and listens to the answer. It was in proving that I didn't just survive. I rose.